G'day everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel, and today's video I will be going through my round 1 AFL tips and predictions. They're just predictions, so please don't give me hate if I tip upsets or my tips turn out bad, as it's just a prediction. Also, round 1 is probably the hardest round to tip because it's a new year and you don't know where teams are because they haven't played in like 6 or 7 months. And the teams' lists have been changed. To kick off the 2023 season, we have the traditional season opener in Carlton versus Richmond at the MCG. Both Richmond and Carlton are finals quality teams that could potentially push for the top 4. At the moment, Carlton are a little bit hit with injuries. I don't know if Walsh is out or not. Williams is out. Williams is one of Carlton's key defenders, and that it's gonna make it pretty tough for Carlton to beat a Richmond team that's pretty hungry in finals and even the top 4. However, Richmond have not been starting well in most of their previous seasons, and Carlton have been starting well since they got good. Although Carlton have had a very dangerous midfield over the years, with the additions of Taranto and Hopper, Richmond probably now have the better midfield. If you follow what I'm saying, you may think I'm probably leaning towards Richmond, but I'm going to tip Carlton by 11 points on the basis of how these two teams have recently started their seasons. And for a big call, I am going to tip a classic Richmond choke, 30 plus points. To follow up Carlton vs Richmond, we have another blockbuster in Geelong vs Collingwood, 2 more teams that can compete for the top 4. Ollie Henry is a big in for Geelong. I don't really know. Sometimes when players play against their former side, they don't really play well. We saw that with Adam Chera in round 6 last year when Freo played Carlton. Lipinski and Ginnivan are 2 big outs for Collingwood. However, they still have Chris Howe, Pendlebury, Adams. They've still got a very good lineup. Geelong have quite a few aging players such as Hawkins, Guthrie, Duncan. The last time these two teams played, Collingwood came really close. Like, they only lost by 6 points. Collingwood are one team that can shock you when you least expect it. I can easily see them winning this game, but I'm going to go safe in this game. I'm going to tip Geelong based on they have the better list probably. I'm going to tip Geelong by 6 points in an absolute thriller. And my big call is the margin will not exceed 3 goals in any team's favour. And now we have the biggest blockbuster you can ever imagine. Just kidding, it's North Melbourne versus West Coast, the bottom 2 teams last year. I really don't see this one being a good game. I feel like it's one team's going to beat the other by a fairly big margin. There have been quite a few times where 2 bottom teams have played and the margin was more than 25 points. Like I said in my predictions video, I'm expecting a better year from North Melbourne because they're under Alistair Clarkson. It's just that their weakness is the players themselves. The players need to step up. On the other hand, West Coast are probably the worst travellers in the league. It doesn't help that they're already a bad team. In terms of the players, I would say it's somewhat of an even game, but I'm probably going to lean on North Melbourne since they now have the better coach in Alistair Clarkson, and the fact that it's at Marvel and they have the home ground advantage, and also the fact that West Coast, like I said, are the worst team for travelling. I'm going to tip North Melbourne to win this game pretty comfortably by 48 points. And my big call is that there will be no players who kick 4 or more goals in this game. Now we have Brisbane in a danger game against Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval. After their 0-5 start last year, Port Adelaide were very, very tough to beat at home. And they lost a lot of close games very unluckily that they should have won. It's tough for Brisbane to beat finals contenders away from home, as proven last year. They lost to Freo and Richmond away from home. They even lost to Hawthorn away from home as well. If Brisbane are going to finish first, they need to bank some wins away from home. They have done that sometimes, but I just feel like Port Adelaide's one of the more tougher teams to beat at home. If it was at the Gabba, I'd definitely be tipping Brisbane. On the other hand, Port Adelaide are not really that good against the top teams. If they're going to be taking another step forward, they need to bank more wins against the top teams, which I think they're certainly capable. Their list is a very high quality list. Brisbane have obviously had the better preseason. However, it is a common trend for teams to do very good in the preseason and do very bad in the normal season. On paper, Brisbane should win with the quality on their list. However, I can easily see Port Adelaide winning this. This time, I am going to tip the upset of Port Adelaide by 1 point in front of their home fans. And for my big call, Ollie Wise will have a day out with 35 or more possessions. For the Saturday night game, we have the 2021 Grand Final rematch in Melbourne versus the Western Bulldogs, except it's at the MCG and not Optus. This is a very interesting game in my opinion. There have been times where the Bulldogs have beaten Melbourne while they were at the top. Notice how in the last 5 games, the 2 times the Bulldogs have beaten Melbourne were in a slump. I don't think the Bulldogs are that bad of a team. I just don't think they're going to do well this year. I know they have Lob, but he's inconsistent, as I said in my season predictions video. I just don't really think the Bulldogs are up for a challenge. I think they're going to be a little bit affected by that elimination final loss against Freo. And Melbourne always start the season well. Last year they started 10-0. The year before they started 9-0. The Bulldogs are also one team that does not have a good defense. And Melbourne has a very, very good forward line. And if you've got a bad defense up against a good forward line, you're gonna have to your forward line's gonna have to step up. And Melbourne's defense doesn't make it that much easier. Melbourne are even more dangerous because of that Gawn-Grundy combo in the ruck, both tall players. In the other Saturday night game, we have an even more interesting clash between Gold Coast and Sydney at what used to be called Metricon Stadium is now renamed Heritage Bank Stadium. In round 1, you have to make big calls. There's always a smashing when you least expect it, and I feel like this game is not going to be close and not going to be a good game. I'm going to do a pretty crazy tip of Melbourne by 81 points, and for a big call, Melbourne will kick 8 or more goals in any quarter. In the other Sunday game, we have Gold Coast taking on the Sydney Swans on their home deck, which was called Metricon Stadium, is now called Heritage Bank Stadium. A big grand final loss usually affects your start to the year, and it's going to be tough for the Swans, especially since Gold Coast is one of their bogey teams. It's not to say Sydney can't win this game. They definitely can, and they should. They probably have the better list. They've got Warner, Golden, Heaney, Franklin. They've got even more players that I can't name, but they're good players. Gold Coast have good players too, like Anderson, Day, Lukosius, Sexton, Chol, Rao, all those players that could be like superstars in the coming years. Like, Gold Coast are one team that's very tough to beat at home, that's for sure. Like, Freo, Carlton, Sydney and Richmond struggled to beat the Suns. Well, Sydney lost at home, and Freo, Carlton and Richmond couldn't win at Metricon. Like, Gold Coast are definitely a team that makes you earn your wins. On paper, Sydney should win, but Gold Coast probably will win. I'm going to tip Gold Coast by 12 points in somewhat of a good game. And for my big call, I'm tipping no player to get more than 30 disposals throughout the game. In the first Sunday game, we have Adelaide taking on the GWS Giants at Giants Stadium. This is a danger game for Adelaide. Recently, Adelaide has had a pretty bad record against GWS. The last two times these two teams met were at Adelaide Oval, and Adelaide got smashed in both those games. We haven't seen Adelaide play at Giants Stadium in a while, so it's hard to see how Adelaide's going to do in this game. GWS sometimes can be hard to beat at home, but they're not really that good of a team. They lost to Taranto and Hopper, two big losses in their list. And I'm expecting a big year from Adelaide. They can potentially make finals. A few people aren't expecting Adelaide to win this game, probably because it's at Giant Stadium. But Adelaide are one team you can never discount. They can beat top teams and even bottom teams that are in form when you least expect it. For me, this is one of those games where it's a 50-50 game, but I think the margin will not be close in either side's favour. If I was to decide who would win this game, I'd probably say Adelaide, because they probably have the better list. Like, Phil Thorpe's an up-and-coming player. Like, they've also got Rochelle, got Tex Walker, who's probably coming back this year. They also have Rankin from the Suns. He's also a very good player as well, if you saw him last year. So, Adelaide will win this game by 38 points, and my big call is that the scores will be level at halftime, so I'm predicting a third and fourth quarter surge from the Adelaide Crows. In the Sunday afternoon game, we have another huge Victorian rivalry in Hawthorn versus Essendon at the MCG. It's not a very interesting matchup between these two teams, as those two teams aren't really that good. However, I do see Essendon pushing for finals this year. Hawthorn have got a really inexperienced list. Like I said in my predictions video, Tom Mitchell and Jager O'Meara are big losses. Essendon have the likes of Parrish and Merritt in the midfield, as well as Peter Wright up forward. Like, Peter Wright's been playing very good recently. He's been kicking a handful of goals. The last time these two teams played, Hawthorn did a massive choke and lost the game by 27 points. Recently, it has been pretty common that the better team of these two has lost. Like, in 2021, Hawthorn beat Essendon. Well, Essendon was clearly the better team. And in 2022, it was a case of the exact opposite when Hawthorn choked and in the end lost by 27 points. I just don't see Hawthorn winning this game. They potentially could, but I just don't really see it. I think Essendon is going to be a better team this year. So I'm going to tip Essendon by 19 points in a somewhat sloppy affair. And being a sloppy affair, I am going to predict 16 or more behinds from both teams to be registered by half time. To close the round, we have my team taking on the St Kilda Saints at Marvel. St Kilda is currently under an injury struggle with King and Membry out, two very important players in their forward line. St Kilda weren't that competitive at the end of the 2022 season, only registering wins against Hawthorn and West Coast, two teams that were close to the bottom of the ladder, and Carlton, who were in a slump at that time. I do have to admit, in that part of the season, they did have to play quite a few top teams. Fremantle still have a good list, but without Akers and Lobb and Logue, it's going to be a little bit harder for them to win games and recite that 2022 form. I still think we're probably the better team, but you can never discount St Kilda. They can shock top teams when you least expect it, especially since it's at Marvel. And last year they shocked us at Optus. Like, we had an abysmal third quarter. That was the reason why. I'm not entirely confident we'll win this game because recently we've had a pretty bad record against St Kilda. Like, they've shocked us quite a few times, and when we were on the same level as them in 2021, we got absolutely flogged. I am going to tip us by 3 points in a thriller, in a much closer version of the Hawthorn-Essendon game. And similar to that game, I am predicting 22 or more behinds combined at three-quarter time. Thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want more AFL quality content. Also, there's a margin competition in the description. Rules are in the description, so enter your tip for the Melbourne vs Western Bulldogs game in the comments, and the person who's closest will get a shout out in the next video. Cheers for watching. Bye.